Good morning or good afternoon or good evening or whatever, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ted Rall with John Kiriakou. You're watching or listening to the DeProgram show. It is about 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time here in the United States. John is still in Europa.
Yep.
So we haven't. We're winging this a little bit because John and I haven't had a chance to coordinate what we're talking about today. So this is going to be kind of spontaneous, but I think we have the gift of gab. We can probably figure it out. So John, what's on your mind? I was personally a little obsessively watching and considering the Supreme Court arguments yesterday. I know you've been traveling, but concerning, it's basically a separation of powers discussion involving the federal courts. But underlying it all is this question of birthright citizenship that dates back to right after the Civil War and the 14th Amendment and the case involving a Chinese American immigrant in the 1890s. And basically we thought it was settled law, but not so much. And here we are. But did you care about that as much as I did?
Yeah, I do care about that. And I watched it closely. I was actually surprised and heartened to see that conservative members of the Supreme Court had some of the same questions that the rest of us have had. They really, I think, cast a shadow on the idea that that the president should or even can suspend habeas corpus and do some of the other things that have either been shown to be unconstitutional or lean toward unconstitutionality when previous presidents have tried to do it. Donald Trump has talked about suspending habeas corpus. That hasn't been done since, it was done at the start of the Second World War, of course, in what became the famous Korematsu case. And before that, during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln did it. And scholars have criticized Abraham Lincoln ever since he did it. We're not in a state of war. There's no reason to suspend habeas corpus. And for whatever reason, Donald Trump has also lumped in birthright citizenship with all this. So rather than to allow these cases to go through various districts and circuits, he went straight to the Supreme Court and asked them to make a decision. That's great, because then it saves all the rest of us, a year or more than a year of nonsense, just hoping that courts do the right thing, only to see the cases appealed. But it looks like Donald Trump may have bitten off more than he can chew on this. Birthright citizenship it's settled law. I mean, the Constitution is actually clear. I talked to our friend Bruce Fine about this. Bruce, being a former Deputy Attorney General of the United States. And he said he can't imagine any fair-thinking Supreme Court justice coming down opposed to birthright citizenship. We've always had birthright citizenship, always. And so, maybe this is going to be a big nothing burger in the end. Maybe it's going to be a 7-2 vote against Donald Trump. I don't know. I will say I got several emails yesterday from friends of mine who had traveled into Washington from elsewhere all around the country just to participate in demonstrations in front of the Supreme Court or to go in and watch the Supreme Court arguments. That's unusual for me. I usually don't have friends like jetting in just to go to the Supreme Court. That's how importantly people are taking this thing.
Well, I mean, it's a core identity, right, of like what it means to be American. Is that we're a nation of immigrants, and part of being a nation of immigrants and and being heterogeneous is that we accept people from all cultures, all walks of life, all over the world. We always have. We're not good at it. It's really hard to immigrate here legally.
It's very hard.
It's ridiculous. I mean, that's always been my complaint about people who say, well, people should come here legally. The problem is that you can't. And certainly there's a demand for it. I mean, and I'm look, I'm sympathetic to the argument that this can be abused, right? I mean, I don't think there's zillions of anchor babies, as the right wingers call
No, see, I'm glad you brought that up. And excuse me, Ted, for interrupting you.
Sure.
But this is a red herring that we get from conservatives all the time. There is not an army of pregnant women who are trying to slip across the border to have their babies here. And besides, even if they did have their babies here, the babies could not anchor them in the United States.
Right. They can still be deported.
Exactly. They still get deported. They still
Right.
get deported. So this is a red herring.
I mean, so the thing is, I mean, has it happened in a country of 330 million people?
Sure.
Sure, it's happened. And there were even some services that, purported to offer that. But I mean, the point is, I think it's one of those things like, it's like welfare. Okay, so some people cheat on welfare, but what's worse than having a welfare system that some people cheat on is having no welfare system. And it's like having no birthright citizenship causes much bigger problems than the possibility of anchor babies, right? It's like you have I have joint citizenship with France. There's no birthright citizenship there. So as a result, there are second, third, fourth generation illegal immigrants. And think about how nonsensical that is. Like your great grandparent came to France illegally, back in whatever, during the colonial era, probably from a former French colony. They stayed there. They're dead. Their kids are dead.
Right.
And you're French. You're as French as the day is long. You like baguettes. You don't get upset when someone's playing an accordion. You're French. And you have wine with lunch. You have wine with dinner. You're French. But but the point is, you have to live in the shadows. You can't hold a job legally. If you see something, you don't say something, you don't call the police because you're afraid you'll get in trouble. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's just a completely ridiculous way to run a country.
And many of those people,
they're screwing up here. I don't want to become like them. They should become like us.
Yes. And many of those people are relegated to what are essentially ghettos. We've all seen films, for example, that show sort of the underbelly of French society and these awful high rises outside of Paris where these generations of refugees are living. It's grim, and there's no hope for these people. As you say, they aren't French citizens. They can't become French citizens, and so there is no French version of the American dream for them.
It's ridiculous. I mean, they're effectively stateless, right? And inside a modern Western European country, and that's not something we should be emulating. John, I'm concerned about as you know, we have a legal system, not a justice system, and you know that better than most. What I'm concerned about here is not that the Supreme Court is going to overturn birthright citizenship, even though it's settled law, and settled law can go away, as we saw in the Dobbs decision. I don't think this one's going away, right? I think there's no question it's going to remain. But what if we and the Trumpies win something bigger than getting rid of birthright citizenship, which is to get rid of the court's ability, an individual court's ability in the federal system to have a national import. I mean, what the Trump administration's attorneys are arguing, the Solicitor General before the Supreme Court, is that let's say the Ninth District Court in San Francisco, a very liberal court, they shouldn't be able to issue a national injunction that applies to everyone in a certain class. And that everybody who's affected by the class should have to pursue their own legal remedies in the courts individually. And the thing is, I saw some sympathy for that position among the conservative majority yesterday. There was acceptance even among some of the liberals that there's been abuse, that this practice has become too widespread. It's not true that it's new, something that the Trump administration argued. It goes way back to the 19th century. But I mean, I think the problem here, the Supreme Court's always interested in practical issues. The practical concern is the legal system is so slow that if the government's moving at lightning speed, if they say, executive order, all Jews must be sent to camps. You can't, by the time that, all the people who are affected go to court, or many of them go to court and becomes a class action and certified, everyone's been sent off to the camp. And we saw how quickly the administration is working to deport people who protest Israel, or people who are allegedly Venezuelan gang members. So it's kind of like, I can see the government's concern here.
Yeah.
But again, what's the bigger problem? I'm more worried about an out of control government than I'm concerned about an overreaching federal judge.
And can you see the Supreme Court proactively weakening the lower courts in today's political atmosphere? I just can't wrap my head around that.
I could see it happening, though, based on the oral arguments. I mean, the
oral arguments were, the questions from the justices during oral arguments were surprisingly pro-Trump.
Yes.
That did take me by surprise. So sure, yeah, I get. I just, having come out of the executive branch, where people are constantly trying to build little fiefdoms for themselves, I just can't imagine I can't imagine a branch of government proactively giving up authority.
They should. I mean, it would be a profound change in the balance of power, and especially at a time when the executive branch is asserting, the reality. I mean, you already have a Supreme Court. I mean, think about these fringe. I'm going to contradict myself here, but we've seen fringe legal theories now become mainstream. I mean, you and I are both old enough to remember that originalism was a fringe legal theory.
Yes,
and now even the most recent Democratic addition to the Supreme Court, Justice Jackson, she's a self-proclaimed originalist. That's a mainstream view now on the Supreme Court. So the unitary executive theory that was floated during the Bush years, but used to just be like, a fringe theory on the far right. Now it's gaining traction. And if you have even liberal justices saying, well, these federal judges, sometimes they issue these broad stays that keep the government from doing what it wants, and they shouldn't have that ability to do that. Or maybe, it seems like the direction that they're going is they're going to sort of say, well, okay, if it involves a constitutional issue, we're going to allow these national stays. But if it doesn't, but I think if they go that direction, isn't the result that every lawyer is going to try to gussy up their case with constitutional questions? And isn't it also true that then you just end up, okay, now you just have an extra round of hearings to determine whether a constitutional issue is at stake?
And that may be the fix. Yeah, that may be the fix. One of the things that surprises me, though, is that we hear from the federal district courts. We're hearing from the Supreme Court. We hear almost nothing from the appellate courts. And I wonder why that is. And in this case, the White House has decided to just skip the appellate courts and go straight to the Supreme Court. And there's nothing wrong with that. That happens all the time. It's just a little bit unusual. Well, I shouldn't say it happens all the time. It doesn't happen all the time. It happens, but it's unusual.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like this is the Trump administration's approach, right? When they see a legal battle that most people would kick that can down the street, they're like, no, let's have this fight now. Let's get it over with. Let's settle it. I don't have a problem with that, but it's a little frightening. I guess this is probably an issue that it needs to be resolved. That's what the Supreme Court is for.
Yeah, that's right.
And I guess I'd rather have them consider it at a time when Americans are kind of frightened of the federal government and its power and its overreach. And even conservative justices seem to be reluctant to sign off on everything the administration is doing. I'd rather have them do it then than say when, Obama's in and people aren't as worried.
Yeah, I have to agree.
So, but it's still nerve-wracking because this is not necessarily a done deal, in terms of this. We know how this should go, which is basically the Supreme Court should shut down this line of argument completely.
Yeah.
It's like, but I don't think
my guess is they will. My guess is they will. I hope so too. Hey, I hope you don't mind if I switch to foreign policy, but man, there are so many different things that I'd like for us to talk about related to Donald Trump's trip to the Middle East. He has left Saudi Arabia after, by all accounts, wildly successful talks with the Saudi leadership. He held a summit yesterday with the Saudi Crown Prince, along with the Emir of Kuwait, the King of Bahrain, and the Sultan of Oman. That's usually what presidents do when they don't have time to go to every one of those Gulf Cooperation Council countries. And there's no offense taken by the local leaders. That's what happened yesterday. Everything seemed to go well. He went on to the UAE just hours after Qatar announced the biggest ever purchase of Boeing jets in the history of Boeing. So Boeing skyrocketed 10% yesterday, and everybody is happy that the company has a second life thanks to the Qatari royal family. Some of the naysayers are saying, well, Donald Trump is doing this because of corruption, and his investments in the Gulf are 3 times what they were when he was president the first time. Okay, and whether we agree or disagree, the Supreme Court has already said that there's nothing wrong with that. So we can bitch all we want. There's nothing wrong with that. So then he went on to the UAE. And I know this is not the most important issue, Ted, but I got to raise it. The TV news stations all around the world today showed Donald Trump and the president of the UAE, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, walking down a red carpet while girls and young women with hair down to their waists were whipping their hair around like this. Okay, I went through the same training that everybody else went through at the CIA and the State Department when I was an analyst. And one of the things that we learned is that the Emirati hair dance, as it's called, is normally done by prostitutes at parties solely for men. So I remember my instructor, a senior ambassador, retired ambassador at the State Department. He had been ambassador to like 6 different countries in the Middle East. And he said that the Emirati hair dance is kind of famous, and that they whip their hair around like this, and you look to see which one strikes your fancy, and then wink, wink, after the hair dance is done, you can make a little private deal on the side, and you can go into the back tent with the girl that you like. Okay.
You can let your hair down.
That's right, where you can let your hair down. So I've never actually seen an Emirati hair dance because they're done with prostitutes. And sure enough, there they are whipping their hair around for Donald Trump. And you could tell by the look on his face that he was like, what the heck is this? This is odd, but kind of fun, but I don't understand what it is. And then the Emiratis are clapping and cheering. And I'm unsure whether they were so thrilled about this visit that they thought they would do something outside the box, or if this was a secret insult. I don't think it was an insult. But why would they do something like this? It's a mystery to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the thing that's funny too about, Donald Trump does not seem to be someone who's, I know there's been those ridiculous rumors about the pee bed and all that.
Right, right.
We know, obviously, Stormy Daniels can fill us in about, and Stormy, if you're watching, you're welcome to come on the show anytime. But we know that he's not an asexual person, but he's not motivated by sex. He's not the kind of guy you can really corrupt with sex.
He's a businessman. This is all about making the deal.
Yeah, he's about money and power always. So, and he's certainly would never fall for something like that. So, yeah, I can't think it's an insult. I was wondering about it though when I watched the video. I thought, well, but we're in the UAE. Why are these women why are they uncovered? Why are their faces uncovered? And I was like, okay, well, now you've answered my question. Thanks, John.
It's just crazy. When I saw it, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. They're all prostitutes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were rolling out the red carpet in every way. So,
and more importantly, Trump said yesterday that we have a deal with Iran. Well, we almost have a deal with Iran. Well, a deal with Iran is possible. And the Iranians are like, we have no deal. We're ready to walk out. We don't know what he's talking about.
Right.
So what are we talking about, do you think? Do you think a deal is possible? And do you think a deal rests on Iran being able to use some of its own uranium for peaceful experimentation and maybe power generation?
Yeah, well, I mean, what the Iranians are saying, and I believe them, is that they're getting a lot of mixed messages from the negotiators at the United States. And look, you don't have to be Iranian to, any American knows that the Trump White House is not exactly a disciplined, communication machine with a unified message. So the Iranians are kind of like saying, one guy told them like, oh yeah, don't worry. Like Witkoff said, you can continue to enrich uranium up to, 3.7%. No problem, no muss, no fuss, just like before. Then like, no. Like then I'm guessing like Netanyahu called Trump and he's like, no. Like we're not allowing that. And then so Trump said, oh, if you don't agree to this deal, something bad is about to happen. And we know that something bad involves, an Israeli fighter jet, obviously dropping bombs somewhere in Iran. So I think that a deal is possible, but the administration's going to have to focus. And basically, it's going to be the Iranians can't agree to give up their nuclear enrichment program entirely.
No. Not when every other country in the world is allowed to have one.
They wouldn't allow. First of all, the domestic political scene wouldn't allow it. The Iranian people wouldn't tolerate that level of humiliation.
That's right.
And also, they kind of, they need. Yes, they have. Iran has oil, right? But
yeah,
lots of it. But still, a nuclear power is the cleanest mainstream form of energy available. Yeah. And as those of us on the left have had to kind of come to understand after despite the no nukes movement of the 80s. So, they need it. They got to have it. They're going to do it. So if the Americans insist on sucking up to the Israelis this way, then the whole thing's going to fall apart.
Well, there's an interesting dichotomy here too. The Iranian government so far has been all in for a deal. They want a deal. They want this whole thing to go away. We've had crushing sanctions on them for 46 years now. And they just saw Trump lift sanctions, also 46-year-old sanctions on Syria with the snap of his fingers. Now, of course, there's a bureaucracy in Washington that's going to have to deal with this, but the policy decision has been made. There are no sanctions on Syria as of yesterday, not officially anyway. So the Iranians see this. The Iranian government says, hey, I want a piece of that. We want sanctions to be lifted. We would love to upgrade our oil industry. We'd love to dredge our harbors, which we haven't had the money to do in so many years. And we'd love to trade with the West because their oil is as pure and clean as anybody else's oil. And God knows there are many markets for it. On the other hand, the Iranian people are saying, whoa, wait a minute. whatever is negotiated with the United States has to uphold Iranian dignity. And then on one day, you've got Trump saying we can make a deal. On the next day, you have Trump saying we're going to bomb them into the Stone Age if there's no deal. And Iranians are tired of being whipsawed like this. While all of this is going on, I think Donald Trump is making it more and more clear every day that he really does want that Nobel Peace Prize. And it looks like Vladimir Putin's not going to give it to him, not in the near term anyway. And, maybe if he makes peace with Iran, he can get it that way. So far, so good in Syria. And then after that's all done, maybe he can turn his attention to Gaza, although I don't trust him on Gaza and Israel at all. But anyway, what do you make of this? Do you think that there's, I would have to say right now that if I had to put money on it, I'd say that we don't get a deal with Iran. But Trump has surprised us before. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I would take that bet, but just barely. I wouldn't be happy about having to put money on it. I'd give it 55-45. We're going to end up with a deal. I mean, I hate to be so Weasley here. I'm a little more optimistic, by the way, on Gaza, and we can talk about that. I did a deep dive on the polling, and that, Trump lives and breathes dies by polls, but we can talk about that. But I think that I think that Trump would like to settle this Iran thing. Remember, in the first term, he wanted to talk to the Iranians. He offered to talk to Ayatollah Khomeini, in person, direct talks. I think direct talks. I mean, the thing is, it's Trump, right? So it's like, I don't know if I trust Donald Trump not to be a bull in a China shop when he goes and talks to Khomeini. So I'm not sure you want that. But can some senior negotiators who are familiar with the Iranians, can they bring this in for a landing? I think so. I mean, there's interest in a deal. John, like you and I talked a couple of days ago, what's currently on the table, which of course is basically like the JPCOA, right? 2.0. Yeah. But it worked before. It can work. It could obviously work again. If anything, it doesn't go far enough. I mean, we need normalization of relations here. I mean, we need to exchange ambassadors. We need to pretty much pretend like the Shah is still in power in terms of diplomacy. Yeah, let's be friends. Right? I agree. And I think Trump Trump understands that. It's about getting there, and in a way that is going to satisfy. I mean, like in all of Trump's peace negotiations or rapprochements or détentes, whatever you want to call them, there's an outside party that's fucking with it, right? So Russia and Ukraine, you've got like Germany, France, and the UK fucking with it. Yep. It's like, and here with Iran, you've got Israel fucking with it. And like and so the point is, as long as if Israel is the determining factor, no deal. I'm not sure Israel is going to remain a determining factor here. Trump cares about Israel, but Israel is being too difficult and is making his life too hard. I mean, and I kind of read a lot into his recent talk yesterday about turning Gaza into a freedom zone.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous.
But it's a ridiculous thing. But it shows that what Trump doesn't like the status quo. He's right now the Israelis are leveling Rafah.
They've killed an inordinate number of people the last couple of days, and they've killed an especially large number of women and children. The Israelis don't give a shit what anybody else thinks about them, and they don't care that they're committing crimes against humanity. They just keep bombing and bombing and bombing, and nobody seems to be bothered enough by it to say anything.
Well, but the point is then, but people are bothered. And like right now, the American voters' support of Israel is at a record low. You can arguably, as we right now with the Jake Tapper book about Biden, corollaries of that, right, is not only Biden's support for Israel, but there's a lot of talk about how U.S. support for Israel in Gaza may have been the number one thing that cost Kamala Harris the presidency. Certainly, a lot of people just didn't vote at all as a result of that, and so looking at the polls, both parties. I mean, the vast majority of Democrats voters do not support Israel anymore at all. Like, it's overwhelming. And now overall, even Republicans are following that direction. I mean, probably no one's more annoyed at the Israelis than Trump. He's got to be, because they're not giving him the freedom of action to do what he wants. And, he can look at the clock. It's like, all right, it's still early in his term, but it won't be early for much longer. By the end of this summer, we're starting to go into the midterm elections. And then the whole thing, whatever he wants to accomplish is going to be considerably harder. So it's instinct, it's speculation, but he's not going to cut the Israelis loose, but I think he's going to kind of tell them at a certain point, like when it comes to Iran, sorry, but I've got to do this. Yeah.
Well, only Nixon could go to China. We talked day before yesterday about Arab views of American presidents and who had the guts to stand up to the Israelis and who didn't. And the only two that did were Harry Truman and George H.W. Bush and John Kennedy. Really, three. But that's it. The Arabs will tell you that they have not gotten a fair shake from an American president since George H.W. Bush. And the only thing that George H.W. Bush did to give them that fair shake was to suspend housing guarantees to Israel because of the proliferation of settlements, new settlements. That's it. That's all he had to do. He told the Israelis, cut it out. They said, make us, and he did. Right. And it was temporary, of course, but at least it was a step in the right direction.
Yeah. The Israeli bullying it's way out of control. It has been forever. I think people are tired of it. I mean, I think there's also just sort of a sense that even for people who are highly sympathetic to Israel and the people they lost on October 7th, 2023, that they're thinking there's still a sense like, okay, you got your metric ton of flesh, and now you're done. Like, we're finished here.
Sky, one of our viewers, points out 53% of Americans expressed an unfavorable opinion of Israel, according to Pew Research. Pew Research. Is my video unstable? That's funny because on my computer I see Ted's video is unstable. Thanks for saying that, Mitchell. But anyway, Pew Research is one of the most highly regarded one of the most highly regarded polling organizations anywhere in America. It is utterly apolitical. So 53%, that's a very impressive number. I mean, really, all that leaves is diehard Israel supporters and evangelical Christians when it comes down to it.
Yeah, and not forever, even for them. So I think the numbers are going to continue to erode. We'll see, but I'm cautiously optimistic there that reason is going to be restored.
And Ted, Mitchell has another question, and this is a really good one. Can we give our thoughts about Trump rescuing Eden Alexander without needing help from Israel? Boy, the Israeli press just lit up over this. Everybody except Haaretz was furious because what did Trump do? He went straight to the Qataris and asked the Qataris to go to Hamas, and they completely cut the Israelis out. And this kid, Eden Alexander, who's been held since October 7th of 2 years ago, a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen, was unilaterally released. Mm-hmm. That was a smack right to the face of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Which needs to happen. I mean, look, the thing is, there was a really fascinating release, a leak from the IDF of what the principal war plans are currently.
That's right.
And the hostages were listed as number 6.
Yeah, they're lucky they scored that high. Yes. The Israeli military doesn't care about the hostages. That's it. That's the bottom line.
And we know that because you know, if someone if John, if someone takes you hostage, I'm not going to drop a bomb on the house where you're being held. You know, you could die. Even if they're nice to you, the could
Israelis do
by my bomb, right? So the Israelis obviously, you know, and there was a really interesting piece, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, in New York, in the New Yorker, about there's a lot of draft refusal and military refusal in Israel. A lot of people are, even people who are, you know, who rushed from other countries to Israel to fight and volunteer and enlist after October 7th. They're like, no, this has gone on too long. This war is counterproductive. This was supposed to be about the hostages. You obviously don't care about the hostages. This is counter to Israeli national interest. So, I mean, look, this whole approach was unsustainable from October 8th. But now, you know, it always takes forever for reason to happen. So I wanted to
share something with you if I could. Yesterday, I'm still in Athens, and yesterday a journalist friend of mine gave me a tour of his newspaper. It's called Protothema, and it's kind of tabloidy, but the reporting on politics and intelligence and foreign policy is straightforward. It's responsible reporting. And it's very popular. It's the second most popular newspaper in the country. So he took me up to the office. I met the publisher and the editor and this guy and that guy and the other guy. Well, he introduced me to the war correspondent. Now, this guy was impressive. He said that the attack took place on October 7th. October 8th, he was landing in Tel Aviv at Ben Gurion Airport. And he said that all journalists in Israel are given a Shin Bet handler, right? You can't go anywhere yourself. You can't ask questions that the Israeli government believes are inappropriate. It's like it was in the Soviet Union in the 50s and 60s, where you go everywhere with your handler. Well, he said that they went down to Gaza, and they went to the area just along the line on the Israeli side of Gaza where the attack took place. And he said, as far as he could see, there was a line of cars with dead people in them, dead bodies in them. And they all had holes in the roof of the car about the size of your fist. And he said, listen, I've been in enough war zones. He said, I've been to Afghanistan, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Bosnia. I know what destruction from a 50 caliber round looks like. Mm-hmm. And these were 50 caliber rounds that were shot from the air, from a helicopter. So he said to the handler, what's up with these dead bodies in these cars? And the handler said, don't worry about that. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. Well, he said it took him about 5 seconds to put together that Israeli helicopter gunships shot into these cars to kill the Israeli hostages, as well as the Palestinians trying to take them back to Gaza. So he said it was clear to him from the very beginning that the Israelis don't give a shit about Israeli hostages. If they can kill a Palestinian along with a hostage, then it's worth taking a shot at the hostage.
Well, do you believe that the Samson directive is real?
Absolutely, yes.
So absolutely, yes. Who don't know what that is? That's a protocol that would say that rather than allow Israeli citizens or nationals to be taken hostage by Hamas or anyone else, that the IDF would kill them.
And they have.
So, you know, I mean, look, I'm convinced, and I think, you know, when you read the reporting from the New York Times and elsewhere, I'm absolutely convinced that the IDF, that Israel knew that the attack was coming. They knew what form it would take, and they let it happen. And the reason I know that sounds conspiratorial, but you know, I mean, if you think about the fact that the response time in was as long as 8.5 hours between the breaching of the smart fence, right? And what is the smart fence? It's like, it's like if you have a burglar alarm in your house and someone opens the window, it severs the connection and the alarm goes off. It's the same thing, right? Someone breaches the fence, the Gaza Israel security barrier. The IDF knows in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem within seconds that it's happened. So you can drive from the diagonal long length of Israel in about 4 hours, taking your time. Nothing is 8 hours away from anything. It's the size of New Jersey.
You could practically walk it in 8 hours.
Right. I mean, Israel's a small country. It's the size of New Jersey. It's the best way to compare it. And it's got modern roads. So it's not like you're, in pre-2001 Afghanistan.
The infrastructure is beautiful.
Yeah, it's Europe. And so basically, so the IDF, they had the satellite footage of the training that Hamas was conducting a year ahead of time. Which, by the way, they posted on social media.
And they spoke freely on open lines that you have to assume the Israelis were intercepting the entire time.
100%. The response time was super slow. They clearly knew it was going to happen. And so I think, and look, this is out there, right? But I think that there was many conversations that went something like this, where someone at the table said, we're going to lose a lot of good Israeli citizens. We should not let this happen. And someone at the table said, they're heroes, they're martyrs for Israel, for a greater Israel. But think about what we're going to get as a result of letting 1 or 2 or 3,000 people go. We're going to get all of Gaza and maybe the West Bank too. But we're going to increase Israel. It's going to solve this problem that's always bothered us. We never liked having those people there. We're going to be able to get rid of them once and for all. It's worth it. I mean, we will mourn them, but it's the price. It's the cost of doing business.
The greater good. It's all about.
I think that was the calculus.
I think so too. Hey, another good question. And this is something that you and I have talked about in the past, is the relationship between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm wondering if it's as simple an answer as Trump has a new girlfriend and his name is Mohammed bin Salman. And that's just it.
Yeah, he's like, I like you so much, I just don't know what to do.
Exactly. I mean, is that what we're looking at here? That's what it seems like. Trump's only going to be president for less than 4 more years, and he's all about self-enrichment. Let's just call a spade a spade. And he can make way more money partnering with Saudis, Emiratis, Qataris, Kuwaitis, Bahrainis than he can with Israelis.
Well, at the risk of sounding a little bit like someone who I think is like one of the worst political analysts of all time, Thomas Friedman.
The worst.
And just a horrible writer too.
Awful.
This is the kind of analysis that I think he would make, and I think he would be right, because he's right sometimes. Is that if you have to choose between hanging with MBS or hanging out with Bibi, I mean, look at what you get when you hang out with MBS. Everything you said, right? Big cash prizes, but also MBS has a big ass vision, right? I mean,
yes, he does.
He's trying to turn Saudi Arabia into a superpower. He's trying to reshape the entire Middle East. He's throwing money everywhere. He's looking way into the 21st century.
Yes.
What does Bibi offer? Bibi's like, he's a small guy running a small country for his own narrow self-interest, which is keeping his own ass out of jail. Something that Trump can probably identify with. But if you hang out with, if your girlfriend is MBS, you're going to go to all the best parties. You're going to travel everywhere. It's going to be fantastic. It's like you hang out with Bibi. It's like you're going to catch a lot of shit, and he's a pain in the ass. Yeah. And it's kind of pretty easy to make that I would make the same call.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's exactly what it is. And I think that foreign policy is going to be a little easier because of it. Yeah, I like that.
I mean,
yeah,
and like we're choosing, honestly. Yeah. Okay. So you don't want to be a journalist around MBS, but like,
no.
I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is a butcher too, and he's killed a lot more people than MBS has.
That's right.
So I mean, over 200,000. Really.
And that's something that Joe Biden should have said 4.5 years ago in the campaign, when he tore into MBS and said that he's not fit to live in civilized society. Okay, that was true as it related to Jamal Khashoggi. But what about Benjamin Netanyahu? How many thousands upon thousands of people has he butchered? Women and children, elderly people, doctors and nurses. And nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah, by the way, Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting has a newsletter called FAIR. It has called Extra that I just received, and they had a really kind of interesting remark about how the ambulance workers who were the ambulance drivers and medics who were assassinated by the Israelis and then buried in a war crime, and that all came out. And they pointed out that in the New York Times and the Washington Post, the headlines couldn't even mention the word Israel.
Right.
The Washington Post headline was like, how ambulance workers ended up in a mass grave.
That is absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah.
Absolutely unacceptable.
It's like they weren't struck down by God. I mean?
No.
No,
they weren't. And one of the ambulance workers, realizing he was probably going to be executed extrajudicially by the Israelis, hit record on his phone and recorded the whole thing. That's how we know what happened.
That's right.
Sickening.
I mean, the whole thing. And by the way, that same ambulance worker, right, called his father and crying and said, the Israelis are attacking us. I think I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Please help me, Dad. It's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's heartbreaking.
And
absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, decent. I mean, so my take on this is, with Gaza, I think we're going to look back, and this is going to end up looking a lot like what happened with East Timor. I mean, when the East Timorese rose up,
it was a joke. Yeah, it was a joke at first because they had no chance and they were just massacred.
Right, but. And
until they won,
half their population was killed by some accounts. But the point is, they're an independent state now. I mean, they had terrorist, revolutionary activities in the 70s. They hijacked a train in, Holland and all sorts of stuff like that. Nobody cared. But when they were once they got slaughtered en masse, the world was like, okay, you get your country. I think that's where we're at.
Well, just a few weeks ago, Israel withdrew its ambassador to Ireland because the Irish recognized an independent Palestine. And Ireland's not a foreign policy kingmaker, certainly, but those drips of water over time have a real effect. And I think that that's the direction in which we're heading.
Yeah, when someone's willing to go first, someone's willing to go second, right? I mean,
that's right.
Who might be next? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm interested.
What other European country would be brave enough to do it? But someone will.
It's a good question. The Turks absolutely would, but they're not really Europeans.
True.
But yeah, what other countries might do it?
It's a good question. I'm just I'm working my way down the list. So who's progressive enough to do it?
Perhaps the Spanish? Definitely not the Greeks or the Italians.
No.
But maybe the Spanish.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
So
it would. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
I think. Yeah. It's and then of course, by the way, today, I don't know if you heard about this, but a couple of hours ago, breaking news that U.S. consumer confidence plunged by 30 8% since Trump became president. That is an astonishing figure. It's a benchmark, measure of, whether people feel like they want to buy things, which, the U.S. economy is 2/3 propelled by consumer spending. It means a lot. People are worried sick about the economy. I think they're probably a little more worried even than they need to be. Being worried is appropriate, but they're panicked. They're scared shitless.
Wow.
What do you? Do you think that this is something that Trump is able to respond to? Basically, he's just been like, well, there's going to be some temporary pain because of my tariffs. He keeps backing away from tariffs. We have a 90-day kick down the road thing with the Chinese. It's very destabilizing.
Excuse me. I think that I think he could weather this because the other numbers have been okay so far. Economic growth is okay. Inflation is okay. The stock market has bounced back because of this decision to suspend or postpone some of the tariffs. So I think that this number, while important as kind of a poll of how Americans feel, doesn't do anything to push us into recession.
No.
I think he'll weather this. Hey, there was something, I know we're running short of time. There was something I wanted to bring up.
Great.
A good friend of mine raised this with me today, and I didn't believe her when she said it. That James Comey, the former director of the FBI, very briefly posted on Instagram the numbers 86 and 47, and then deleted it. He denies that he did this.
In seashells, right?
Yeah, right. So these numbers, of course, are code. 86 is the code for death. And 47 is the 47th president of the United States, which would be Donald Trump. So kill Trump? Seriously?
Well, I'm gonna push back a little bit on that.
Please do.
86 doesn't necessarily mean kill, right? Deep six means to.
Deep
but
six.
But the historical origins, as my former co-host on Sputnik, Angie Wong, pointed out online, and she's correct about this. It goes back to Chumley's, the New York City bar that's basically was a famous speakeasy that stayed open long after the 1920s, and it was code for that throw that customer out, usually because they were drunk and obnoxious. So 86, that guy, get rid of 86 Kiriakou, he's got to go. So it doesn't mean kill, but it definitely doesn't not mean kill also. It's it's definitely been in usage. And so it could also mean just get rid of or impeach or whatever. It's a little bit, first of all, I don't understand getting rid of it. Okay, he deleted his post.
Yeah.
It's the internet. It's kind
too
of
cute by half. Yeah. Too
just
cute
leave
by
it
half.
up. Yeah. Own it. Everyone, I think when you take it down, it makes you look worse.
I agree. I agree. And he was trying to be coy by saying, cool shell formation I saw on my beach walk today. Like a child. And then the response has been exactly what you would expect it to be. Trump said, this was a call for my assassination. Trump was all over Fox today saying this was a call for my assassination. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, said that DHS is investigating, the Secret Service is investigating. Kash Patel issued a statement from the Justice Department saying that the FBI is cooperating with DHS on all aspects of the investigation. Comey is 6'10", so I might have to jump up a little bit and whack him in the face and say, what the heck's wrong with you? Why would you do some stupid thing like this?
Well,
if he didn't put the shells like that, then he should just have walked past and not said anything. It's just so dumb.
You can't blame James Comey for not liking the guy who fired him, though.
No, of course not. But I've been fired too, and I don't then call for the assassination of the guy who fired me.
Right. James, it is a little childish. Social media it just brings out everyone's inner child. It's not in a good way. No, I guess what will happen here? I mean, do you think they really will investigate? Do you think they'll send agents over to Secret Servicemen over to Comey's house? And
I do. And I'll tell you why, because I have a friend who posted on Facebook that he wished he could vomit on Donald Trump. Okay, that's all he said, is that he wanted to vomit on Donald Trump. And 4 days later, Secret Service wanting to have a conversation. So yeah, I think they're going to take this seriously, if only for to score a couple of political points against Comey.
And it's also kind of just like their procedure, right? Like sort of, we have to follow up every threat on the off chance that.
I told the story here in Athens just last night. I had a very dear friend who was in the Secret Service. We were in the CIA together, but he had originally been in the Secret Service, and he was, in Dallas when Kennedy was killed. And by the mid 1970s, he had been petitioning to create an intelligence division within the Secret Service. They finally agreed to do it, and he was the very first director of the Secret Service's intelligence division. So they were getting letters every couple of days from Sarah Jane Moore, who was a nut who lived in San Francisco. And she would write letters saying, I'm going to kill the president. And so he said they were just so used to her writing these letters that they just started just ignoring her. Well, then the president, this was Gerald Ford at the time, decides he's going to make a trip to San Francisco. And so my friend Mike goes out in advance, knocks on Sarah Jane Moore's door and says, Sarah Jane, you're not really going to kill the president, are you? And she says, no, I was mad and my Social Security check was late and I was just mad. So I wrote that letter and I didn't really mean it. Ford flies out to San Francisco. Sarah Jane Moore standing on the side of the road, bang, 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 trying to kill the president.
Right.
And then she serves almost the rest of her life in prison. Right. And so you've got to take these things seriously. You have to investigate every single one of them, whether it's because somebody wants to vomit on the president and says that on Facebook, or whether the former head of the FBI says 86-47.
I mean, and I think a lot of the time, and, I'm not exactly team law enforcement, but a lot of the time, right. A lot of cops or police agencies, their job is kind of just I see you, don't. And it often works. I think it's part of the job that is really just underappreciated by the public, is that sort of policing in the true sense of preventing crimes from happening. I was getting a lot of death threats back during the Bush years, and this one guy kept calling and making very violent, disturbing threats. I'm not going to say what he said because it'll give people ideas. But anyway, the point is, he kept calling. I don't know how he got my number, but he kept calling. And then one time he foolishly forgot to cover his caller ID. And I'm like,
what a dope.
So I look it up, and it turns out he lives in the only municipality where I know the chief of police, and he's a fan of my cartoons, right?
Oh,
in the entire country. I know because he's written to me and we're friends and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is unbelievable. What are the odds? So I call him up and I'm like, can I do anything about this asshole? And he goes, listen, I'll take care of it. And he's like, don't worry. We're just, we can't, if you pursue it legally, nothing will happen. But I have a better way. And he's like, and it'll be fun. So the guys, it's in California. The guys sits down for dinner with his family. He's like a boring suburban schlub with a wife and a kid or two. Sits down 6:30 at night, and suddenly in the tree-lined suburbs, black and whites blaring, come from all directions, screech to a halt. The cops run up to the front door, boom, 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 boom. And then they're like, so, they start reading him his Miranda rights. What's this all about? He asks. Well, if you really have to know, you're threatening this fucking cartoonist back east. So, I don't know how long you're going to go to prison, but, let's go. And, they cuff him. They get ready to take him. And then the guy's like, no, like I was just fucking around. I'm like sorry, like I can't stand that guy's politics, but I won't do it anymore. And the chief is watching the whole thing, and he's like, you sure? Like, I need your word of honor that Ted Rall will never hear from you again. It's like, and then maybe I can like let this go. And the guy's, no, I promise. So they shook hands. The kid's watching, the wife's watching. It's like, uncuff him. All right, be careful. And I never heard from him again.
That is absolutely great.
And the cops he couldn't stop laughing about it.
That is great.
The guy was terrified. And I was like, man, he wasn't so terrified when he was leaving me these extremely disturbing, very specific threats against me and my family.
I've only had one threat that the authorities have deemed to be legitimate, where the FBI called me and told me that it would probably be best for me to leave home for a few days. Mm-hmm. That this woman had called into a radio station in Oakland and threatened to kill me and my family after I blew the whistle on the torture program. And so we went to the airport and we flew to Cancun for a week. And this woman was driving cross country and they finally got her. But you never know. You got to take these things seriously. There was a woman who, she saw me giving a speech on C-SPAN, of all places. And she said that I proposed to her in code while I was giving my speech. I know. I thought it was funny at first, too. It wasn't so funny. Yeah.
No.
She actually flew to Washington with a gun to kill my wife so that we could be together forever. And she came to my office on Capitol Hill, and the cops got her with the gun. Yeah, from Lincoln, Nebraska.
I had a similar situation. The FBI called me. There was a book by Bernard Goldberg called 100 Americans Who Are Screwing Up America. I'm number 15 and wow. In the book. And I got a call from the FBI saying that there was this guy in Tennessee who they had been tracking and who wanted to kill all 100 people in the book.
My God.
And what's really disturbing is they didn't say how they obtained this, but obviously, FISA court, I'm sure. But they showed me photos of me dropping my son off at his school.
Oh, shit.
The guy had stalked me all the way to New York. And he had stalked Hillary Clinton, a number of other people in the book. So they were trying to figure out how to nail him. And in the same sort of thing, I lived in a community where there's a special squad of people who deal with prominent people, cops who deal with prominent people. They parked a black and white on my street. I was very popular with my neighbors because everyone had to show ID coming over. But, I was very grateful to their assistance. And ultimately, they nailed the guy on all sorts of weapons charges. The guy had enough guns to shoot up five high schools. And they got him up on trumped up shit. I was like, good, thank God. And
I'm looking at this right now, Ted, and you've got some really amazing company on this list. You're up there with Al Franken, Courtney Love, Michael Moore, Howard Dean, Al Sharpton, Eminem, Ted Rall. Oh my God Almighty! I've
Eminem.
never seen.
Because what did Eminem do?
The chapter on Courtney Love just says "ho." That's it. That's the chapter.
Yeah, and this is a best-selling book.
Yeah, in fact, it was so best-selling, he came out with another one in 2006 called 110 People Screwing Up America. Wow.
Yeah, and it's dangerous to make lists, Lists
yeah,
lists
it is. It is.
So seems like a good place to say that we've been sufficiently deprogrammed.
That was awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us, John. Have a safe travels.
Thanks, buddy.
We'll be back next week. We'll do this a couple more times. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Just a reminder, please check out my book, What's Left, just came out. You can get it everywhere. Just go on Amazon or anywhere else. Order from your local bookstore. All right. Take care. See you next week.
Bye-bye.